just what is the ultimate 16-bit system? Obviously there's two machines that usually stand tall above everyone else, the Mega Drive and SNES. Other than that, you have a few little pockets of support for others, the ardent PC Engine fans, the largely European Amiga lovers, the largely French Atari ST lovers, and of course those with bottomless pockets and a Neo Geo to show for it. Everyone's got something that they champion. If you were to look at things objectively, of course, well, you kinda just muddy the picture further. Who does the most colours? What's got the best processor speed? What about those different chips and modes, eh? It gets complicated. But there is one system out there that may well be the objective kin. For many people, it's the 16-bit dream machine, a holy grail. To have one truly represents a love of all things 16-bit based. In a time when the shelves were often filled with arcade ports that were getting closer to the originals but were still a fair bit away, this machine routinely shoved out ports that were as close to perfection as you could get. Lovers of arcade genres speak of it with reverence, in particular an endless library of classic shoot-em-ups that cannot be matched. And hey, once you've finished with the absolutely blistering gaming on offer, you could fire up a word processor, sort out your CV. There's seemingly nothing this system can't do. That system is, of course, the Sharp X68000. A computer released in Japan only, originally for the cost of 369,000 yen, equivalent to roughly $3,000. The system's arcade pedigree is unquestionable. In fact, the X68000 was so similar to Capcom's CPS arcade system that it was used as the company's development machine. I couldn't possibly list all the excellent arcade ports that exist for it, there's just not enough time in the world. Being a computer, it does, as mentioned, have various office-style functions, but make no mistake, much like the Spectrum and Amiga and most other computers of the time, this was a machine primarily used for playing games on. The powerful spec and accuracy makes it an ambition for many, certainly for me. Ever since I saw those lovable GameSack guys do a video on the computer and its games, I've seriously wanted one. But they are not cheap. A working X68000, rare even in Japan these days, will set you back hundreds of pounds, if not 1,000. And that's before you factor in all the other things. Expansions including various MIDI modules, peripherals that allow you to use standard 9-pin D-sub controllers such as a Mega Drive pad, some sort of upscaler to display it on a modern TV. Oh, and of course, all the games. It's way too rich for my blood. Now, if I were doing a system overview or a documentary style video, this wouldn't stop me. Emulators do exist after all, and I could talk about the system while using them in order to get some sort of experience. However, this isn't a documentary style video, it's something different. Because even though the system's far too rich for my blood just to get started with, I've stumbled across one. Sort of. One day, browsing Facebook Marketplace, I saw one. For 35 quid. I'm deadly serious. The bargain to end all bargains, you might think. But of course, there is a catch. It's not exactly working, to say the least. And yes, I knew that going in, nor is it a simple fix. But still, 35 quid. The motherboard's still inside there, thankfully. So this is the introduction to a project of sorts. A project to get this glorious system into working shape so that it can truly take pride of place in my glorious 16-bit homestead. But first, well, we need to have a proper look at it, so we can see what we're truly up against. Well folks, here it is, the Sharp X68000. And yeah, I'm so happy to finally kind of have this in my collection. I mean, I certainly didn't expect to at any point, but yeah, here it is, sort of, at least what's left of it. Now, you might be thinking of that, I'm going to put it down because it's kind of heavy, you might be thinking, looking at that most X68000s that you've probably seen online are towers. Well, that is a horizontal model, that is the X68000 Pro Edition. And yeah, it's a horizontal model, so it's kind of designed to, you know, have your monitor on top of it or whatever. There are several different models of the X68000. Trying to remember all of them. There was the Pro, there was the Expert, there was the Super, the Ace, there was compact models, and then eventually you got the 68030. So kind of things that are different aside from the horizontal about this model. There's several things. I mean, it still comes with the same 10 megahertz processor, which I think is a Hitachi. That was in the first one. Probably one of the main differences as far as convenience goes. The original X68000 tower, for whatever reason, had the first joystick port on the front, and the second joystick port was on the back. This one, much more sanely, has the two of them together. It's also got keyboard and mouse as well on the front, and I think, I'm not entirely sure about this, that the original one had the keyboard port and then the mouse port was actually on the back of the keyboard. I think that's the case. I know that the keyboard is quite a bespoke thing for the X68000. At this moment I don't have any of that. You've got reset, interrupt, volume, headphones, power, all that other good stuff. So yeah, at the back, can you see at the back, you've got all your kind of usual things, I suppose, on the back. We have connections for RGB and VGA. We have other things. There's connection for a printer, a remote, a RS232 as well, and of course the power supply, which is AC 100 volts. You can also put an expansion floppy disk drive in if you want, as well as a hard disk. An expansion floppy disk drive, if the two 5 1/4 inch floppy disks on the front just weren't enough, you can add a third. So yeah, that's the back. As far as the outside goes, as far as this case and all that, there's a bit of a big stain on it here. But another big thing about the X68000 Pro that's important, the original X68000 only had 2 expansion slots. The X68000 Pro, it's got 4. So plenty more space for expansions, plenty more space for, I mean, often MIDI modules are the thing that mainly goes in there these days. People want their Roland MT32 and all that. So yeah, that can go in no problemo. So all looks good kind of so far, I guess you're kind of thinking, but yes, I've not really shown you the scope of the sort of things that are going to have to be done for this. So to show you that, I'm going to turn it around and then I'm going to open up the case. Wield this monstrously heavy thing into position. It's like having a bit of a hi-fi unit in it. Let's see, I've opened up the case and, well, basically the motherboard's in there, and that's about it. We've got the motherboard. So yes, this unit, when I bought it, it's missing the power supply. There's no power supply in it, nor is there any floppy drives. Both the floppy drives are gone. So yes, those are the main things. The expansion unit is still there though, in the corner, and of course somewhere in there, in this motherboard, is the chip that this machine is named after, the Motorola 68000, which is pretty much one of the most important chips in the whole of gaming. I mean, the Motorola 68000 powered the Mega Drive, of course. Computer-wise, it powered the Amiga, the Apple Macintosh, the Atari ST, the Neo Geo was a 68000 machine, and which again leads me to another very important thing about the 68000. It powered lots of arcade machines, a Capcom CPS system, Sega System 16, 68000 based, SNK Neo Geo. I mean, the chip had tons of applications. It was an incredible piece of kit. So that's what this machine is named after, the Sharp X68000, of course. But yes, so these are basically the fins, the major fins that we are going to have to do. Obviously, we're going to need to procure a power supply. Now, power supply shouldn't be too difficult. I mean, I kind of think it's weird like this doesn't have a power supply, because obviously at some point this machine was stripped for parts. Why you would want a Sharp X68000 power supply, I do not know, because power supplies, the original ones for this, are notorious for failing. Like, almost anyone who gets an X68000 has to replace the power supply because they screw up immediately. So, modern options for that, you can get a Pico power supply, or what might probably be a better option is you can actually sort of retrofit a micro ATX power supply in there. You need like certain cables, perhaps some custom cables made, but that can be done and that can be fitted into the machine. A more modern solution, which might be better, because the thing with a Pico power supply, it's easier to do that, but if say you then, you know, you put two like modern floppy disk drives in. You put in a sort of hard drive adapter if you want a hard drive in it. You know, you could do all these things. The power supply can run out of juice, and also if you've got a lot of stuff going in the expansions. So the micro ATX might be the way to go. Now, as for floppy drives, basically you have two options. You can either try and source two 5¼ inch floppy drives which are compatible. There are some PC 5¼ floppy drives that are. Or what I'm probably going to do is I'm going to get two HXC floppy drive emulators. That's probably the path of least resistance. I would love to have a way of playing original games on this and importing them on Japan. But as far as like Twins goes, and just being able to like play games on the machine, I think floppy emulation is going to have to be the way. And it's not really a thing where you can have one or the other. So that is probably the game plan. Other things that need doing, obviously it's going to need a bit of a clean-up inside. It's a little bit dusty, but in terms of more detailed clean-up, recapping is probably going to have to be a thing. It would definitely be a shame, you know, if you go to all the trouble of replacing the power supply, replacing the floppy disks, and then, you know, you get screwed over by a faulty cap. I mean, I'm having a look at the caps. I mean, I can see a couple of them that seem to be a bit faded out and maybe a little bit rusty. I can't see any that are bursting at the bottom, but then I don't exactly have a trained eye for electronics, so I'm not entirely sure of what I'm looking at. There are people who are a lot more talented than me than this one. I'm not Retro Man Cave or anything. So yeah, I mean, it all looks okay, but better safe than sorry. Probably going to have to recap the unit, and also I don't know what's hiding under this expansion unit. There might well be some bad ones there. Speaking of other potentially bad things, there's the Sram Battery, which I do believe is right at the back here. Now, the Sram Battery is known for being quite the ticking time bomb. It can fail, it can rust, it can wreck the motherboard. It's a good job to replace it. I mean, replace it because obviously being SRAM, that controls your saved games. So, you know, you want to be able to save those sort of things. But that is probably worth replacing. Aside from that, obviously I'm going to need some peripherals. I'm going to need a keyboard and that, and the Sharp X68000 keyboard is quite bespoke, as I've said, so I'm going to need to go on Yahoo Auctions Japan and see what I can find on that front, as well as any other peripherals I might need. A mouse as well would obviously be quite handy. So, I mean, this is a project, you know, it's going to take some time to get it all done. I kind of wanted to make this video as an introduction to kind of show this machine and show kind of what needs to be done for me to get it to this point. I mean, it's going to take a while, but I'm going to be documenting every stage of the process as I try to bring this X68000 back to life with the help of other people. I mean, ever since kind of revealing this on Twitter, I've had so many people come and be so helpful. They've kind of given me a bit of a crash course in this machine and the different things that I could do in order to get this back working, which has been, you know, brilliant. I mean, I guess that's kind of a YouTuber perk, I suppose. You get like people willing to do that, which is brilliant and kind of humbling. Sorry, my cat, my cat just went and then just shot back away again. God. Anyway, I'm completely sidetracked by that. So yeah, I mean, it's going to be a few months, I think, at least before this is back working, but hopefully it will be. And then once everything is done, you know, I'll have like a big video of like this whole project. I mean, it's another big thing in the Kim Justice to do pile, that's for sure, but I just keep looking at it. I mean, the case itself, I mean, I'd happily have paid 35 quid just for the case alone, even if there was nothing inside it. I mean, I'm sure there's something cool could have been done with it, but yeah, I mean, it's an X68000 Pro. It's pretty brilliant, really. So yeah, not really much else to say at this point. I mean, it might be a while before you see this all again. It's not really something that I want to do in parts. I'd like to do it all and then get one big video together, kind of, again, typical Kim Justice documentary style sort of thing, only, I guess, a more personal project this time. So yeah, that is going to be basically the end of the video, and yeah, hopefully you enjoy this X68000 journey as we try to win this, perhaps the kin of the 16-bit consoles, or computers rather. We try to bring it back to life and enjoy shoot 'em ups. Lots of shoot 'em ups. Anyway, that is going to be the end of the video, so if you like this video, please support me on Patreon, Twitter, Facebook, social media, all that stuff. It's all in my description. And yeah, I shall see you later for something else pretty cool. Bye for now. The community would like to thank Adam Schaefer, Alex Stocco, Alexander Jazeri, Andrew Dalton, Andy Capt, Daniel Briggs, Daniel David Taylor, David Rose, Dustin Cooper, Gary Pinkett, George Newton, Grafham Blackpool, Ian Roberts, James Idd, James Loveridge, Jason Durso, Jason Goy, Jason Stevens, Jace Alexander, Josh Jensen, Lee Norris, Mark Greaves, Martin Pataki, Mike's Games Room, Morton Scarnin, Nanette McCrone, Nicholas Tristan, Olaf Albeen, Peter Jack, Peter Sidorn, Philta Prog, Potter Margel, Pocky Southmaid, Rachel Maxwell, Romeo, Ryan Burford, Sammy Lee, Samuel Victor, Scott Coulter, Seth Robinson, Simon Gulliver, Stephen Warner, Tanya J, Yucca Operator, and Zach Roach.